teams lined up in a 4-2-3-1. We got Tottenham on this side and we got Newcastle on this side. Kinski in goal, Ben Davies, Danso, Christian Romero, Pedro Porro, Gray, Betancourt, Son, the final farewell game, Sarr, Johnson, and the striker was Matt Testel. He can move around, play as a left winger as well. Newcastle, they're also in a 4-2-3-1. We got Trippier, Pope in goal, Schär, Dan Burn, Target, Bruno Guimaraes, Mille, Jacob Murphy, Joe Linton, the number 10, Harvey Barnes, and Gordon was the striker because Isak has just refused to come and he's training in Real Sociedad these days. He wants to make that move to Liverpool. If we look at the way how Tottenham pressed, it was basically Tell here on the goalkeeper. This high press going on over here with these two guys marking the double pivot. And so basically it was a sort of a man-to-man press from Tottenham. It was Newcastle who had 62% of the possession and Tottenham had 38%. So it's classic Thomas Frank style where you don't go for that much possession, although there will be bouts where you're going to have a lot of possession, and we saw that in this game where Tottenham had a big chunk of the possession. But overall, it was a fast-paced game, and that's why we saw Newcastle with a major chunk with 496 passes and Tottenham with 310. And even the pass accuracy of Newcastle was at 87% compared to Tottenham's 77%. And so basically Tottenham were the physical team that were going for the fouls, and Newcastle were the team that were looking for possession and that vertical style of play. Shots, Newcastle also had 12 compared to Tottenham's 7, but there was a big difference, and that is probably because they were missing Isak. Newcastle just had 2 shots on target, and Tottenham out of the 7 had 5 shots on target. When Tottenham were going vertical, trying to build up, and they'd obviously want 2 players in close conjunction over here, and one of these guys moving at the back. So 3 players. But what Newcastle would do was they would try to bar, and let's say this guy's got the ball. They try to barge the player, and they had 4 players doing this gegen press sort of counter press sort of a thing, trying to take these guys out. And in that situation, this guy, he should be making that run, although we didn't see much of that. We did see some good footwork that when this guy passed it to him, he dribbled over here and gave the pass to the fullback. When Tottenham were building out from the back, Tell was basically the focal point person, and they were trying to, get the ball to him because most of the game Tottenham were like this. And so they'd want to get the ball to Tell and then get that second pass and then move forward. And in case they didn't, they passed the ball to Pedro Porro, and when Newcastle were playing that high line, we'd see runs behind the line and Pedro Porro go long. But most of the time what was happening was that when you go long and the team's playing a high line, it's the goalkeeper's job to play that sweeper-keeper role. And so if, it's not that accurate or the high line somewhere around here, you play that long ball, the goalkeeper most of the time is going to get to it. And so we saw that, and that's why those long balls were basically nullified. They weren't doing the long ball target shot so that then, they try to win that second ball back. It was going over the top, making the runs behind the lines. And so the goalkeeper you'd see him coming out of his box at times. Newcastle are one of the teams that can defend when they have to, and you'd see a lot of that as well. And you'd see about 8 guys in the box, even 9 and sometimes 10. Although a better idea is you have 9 guys in the box and 1 target man over here for that counterattack situation, even somewhere over here. But we'd see Newcastle go all defensive, and we'd see 10 guys in the box at times too. Even then, when Tottenham were taking the shots, it would still get through this, and Nick Pope came to save the day for them. Time we also saw when Newcastle was trying to play out from the back, to get the ball to the DM, they break that press, and once they do that, what they want to do is they'd want to make that line-breaking pass around here to one of these forwards. And so when they do that, Tottenham's defenders would really jump up and man-mark these guys and even commit tactical fouls if they had to. But we saw in one instance that the ref didn't call the foul, and they actually won the ball back, went inside. And that's how the first goal actually happened, that they won that ball with the defender jumping up and Tottenham winning it on the press. And Brennan Johnson took that shot. It was a deflection and went straight in the goal. Well, he's the same guy who was the hero of the Europa League final against Manchester United. So Johnson, you cannot call it a fluke, although fine, it was a deflection, and Nick Pope is a really good goalkeeper. But Johnson does have these goal scoring instincts. So he's one of their top guys, and once Son leaves, he's also one of the candidates for that left wing role. We'd also see more of these counter presses in this area, the midfield, and obviously the defenders were involved, and we'd see Tell moving outside, and he'd get the ball, and Son moving inside, and he'd lay it off for Son, and Son, who's a good dribbler, would try to move inside, and then obviously we'd see the rest of these guys moving forward as well. So once Tottenham went in the lead, obviously they were gonna drop deep, and so they dropped in their core 4-2-3-1 formation because obviously they were now defending their lead. Newcastle went in their 4-2-3-1 build-up shape. And they're in their 4-2-3-1. It also at times, because if Tottenham was deep, it become a 4-3-3. And so, when they're Tottenham tried to press, basically they were doing that zonal play. And so we saw Newcastle players drop deep, especially Gordon, who's a striker, come down on the side because he normally plays a winger as well. Newcastle were chasing that goal, so we saw a lot of this from Tottenham as well. So basically, what Newcastle were doing initially, Tottenham was doing later on to break these two down. We'd see some of this stuff with the overlaps and getting the ball through and playing those crosses inside with Gordon and even Joe Linton, the number 10, moving in, trying to get at the end of the balls. Although there were some gaps at times, like over here, Murphy was involved as well. When Tottenham was in a low block, it was going to be really hard for Newcastle to go for that equalizer because, it is very difficult. So what they do is they'd again start dropping deep. And the reason for that was that they wanted Tottenham to come up high and so that they could find that space behind the lines and do that counterattack. One of the plays, Gordon did get that cross, and so he crossed the ball, and Joe Linton made his way up here, and just by a fraction of a second, Joe Linton missed it, and that was one of the close ones. Newcastle's goal, we saw this counterattack coming here, and it was Barnes basically on a 1v1 against Pedro Porro, and he turned inside and he took that near post shot, and it was a brilliant counterattack. Ball went in, goalkeeper could do nothing about it, so that was the equalizer. Second half, we saw an injury for James Maddison, not good, and obviously we saw Son's final substitution, obviously an emotional moment. So 1-1, and that's that.